NBA Courtside.
LeBron for three for the win. Yes! LeBron James at the buzzer!
Rose off a screen, line to the lane in traffic. Counted foul! How did that ball go down the pipe?
NBA Courtside.
I'm a dumbass.
Here's Ben Heisler and Coach Nick Hauselman.
Welcome in, everybody. It is NBA Courtside with Coach Nick. My name is Ben Heisler. Glad that you've decided to join us today. Coach, how's it going?
It's going absolutely fantastic, and I cannot wait for the season, even though I'm not ready for it yet.
What do you mean you're not ready for it? I think you've been anticipating the games for months now. How can you tell me that you're not ready for the season to get started?
Oh, I have hard drives to buy. I have DVRs to update, all sorts of stuff.
Well, you know what? I've been ready. And I think part of the reason that I've been ready is I want to see Derrick Rose play, and it's so nice that it's going to be the first game against Miami. And I'm thinking that it's probably going to be something similar again. I think you're going to see a lot of explosion out of Rose, really to start things off.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I was actually talking with Coach Thibodeau in Vegas during the Summer League this summer, and I was impressed by the dedication he had to sort of the organic nature of the offense, where it's not going to be so rote. There's going to be sort of a flow to it, and we see that a lot more now in the preseason with a lot of sort of San Antonio sets that they're using.
Yeah.
Which is it's very exciting because it's only going to make a guy like Derrick Rose that much better to get him moving around screens and attacking from places that the defense isn't set up to stop.
And a lot of people were very, very mixed about whether Rose should have come back last year. And I was one of those people in the camp that felt that he should come back because the doctor said that this was the right time, and it's part of the ACL rehab. You're supposed to be able to play through it and sort of learn where your body is at. And granted, he's coming back and he's looking strong now. But I guess where are you if you're Derrick Rose and all of a sudden you're going on your own methods, you're not following doctor's orders? To me, that was a little bit upsetting for me.
It was definitely strange. I mean, my answer to that last year was, well, I know what Michael Jordan would have done in that situation, or certainly in Kobe Bryant, we know what they would have done.
Right.
It's very difficult to try and figure out what a player is feeling and how he's doing. I think it's pretty clear the team wanted him to play because they kept leaving the door open for him, kind of leaving him out to dry, and I could see why he might have been a little frustrated. So it's not real clear. I don't know if the team has needs to rebuild their trust in him and that he'll be there for them. But I don't think we'll see a situation like that where a guy coming off an injury took that long to come back. While he was practicing, we see the footage of him during that playoffs, wondering every day, is it going to be the day? I think it was a distraction.
I think it was too, and I think unfortunately you had to put something with the other players on the team where they had to answer questions for Derrick, and of course he's their best player. They're not going to throw him under the bus, but Joakim Noah was playing hurt. Luol Deng was playing hurt up until the point where he had the spinal tap and he couldn't come back. It was just a really unfortunate situation for a team that really, overachieved, I thought, with all those guys missing. Beat the Brooklyn Nets in 7 games where they really had no business beating a team that was far superior talented than they were, but they beat them at their own game, and they took Deron Williams out in Game 7. The Bulls are one of those teams I look at sort of coming into this offseason, Nick, as just I don't think they're going to be better than Indiana. I certainly think Miami is still the team to beat. But the Bulls can be one of those teams that goes ahead and wins the regular season because they've done that under Coach Thibs. And I almost wonder, at one point, does Thibs begin to get the message of maybe I got to rest my guys a little bit more to make sure I get a little bit more success in the postseason?
We're going to find out in the first 10 games if he's going to have a little bit more restraint, which he absolutely does need. And it looks like he's got enough depth to do that. But certainly I think the reason why the Bulls are better positioned to beat the Heat, even if they don't have a better record than Indiana, is that the Bulls are the only team in my mind that has 2 elite wing defenders that could guard both LeBron and Dwayne Wade in Jimmy Butler and Luol Deng. I don't think that Indiana has that. I think they have Paul George, and then after that, they don't have. I don't think Lance Stevenson is not sold in my mind as an elite defender, and certainly not Danny Granger. And so I feel like that is the recipe that a team is going to need if they want to beat the Heat, and that is what leads me to believe the Bulls do have the best chance in beating them.
It's something that we're going to be arguing throughout the course of this year, whether or not the Pacers or the Bulls have sort of set up for that number 2 seed to go up against Miami in the East. And as far as the West goes, it's going to be a strange look seeing the Clippers as one of those teams to beat. I think you look at them and the Spurs arguably as the 2 favorites to come out of the West. But is there any team maybe outside those 2, Nick, that stands out as far as a team to really be reckoned with this year?
Absolutely. I mean, it's going to be a bloodbath. Let's just make it clear right now. The top 4 and 5 teams are going to be killing each other. I think the Golden State Warriors, with the experience they got playing in the Spurs again in the playoffs last spring, will be very beneficial. I think they're on the verge of being able to take that next step in getting to the conference finals. They added Iguodala, which is a great addition.
Love that move.
Now, they did lose Jarrett Jack and Landry, and those are going to be huge holes to fill that they might end up regretting doing. But that's certainly a team you have to watch for. And OKC, is going to be missing Russell Westbrook for the first 2 months, but of their first 15 games, they still should win about 10 of them anyway. And I think that we're going to see one of the greatest 6-week stretches by a player ever on the court when Kevin Durant is able to run the show, score, and do everything for them.
I think that's a good point, too. And I think I almost maybe underestimated the Warriors, too, because I was looking, and we're going to talk about here in this segment, our top offseason moves, our sort of ranking our best 5. Before our guest Sam Mitchell, the former Coach of the Year, current NBA TV and radio analyst, is going to join us here on Courtside. Golden State's a really intriguing team, and I'm looking, and I don't want to give it away, but you mentioned Iguodala. The fact that he brings a little bit more ability to be able to guard both the wing and also guard the 4 if he needs to, a terrific defensive player. And you talk about a veteran guy that's going to really make a key impact, and I think a good person for Harrison Barnes to be able to learn under as well. He made some strides last year. I think he can even get better. The talent's there with him.
Absolutely. Harrison Barnes is a future All-Star. It's only a question of when. I know that he studies film as much as Iguodala does, so they're going to be peas in the pod there, and really he'll definitely benefit. And as long as Barnes gets his 28 to 30 minutes a game, I don't care if he starts, if he comes off the bench, doesn't matter. That development will take place, which is what people seem to be worried about. But I'm not worried. I know he'll get the minutes, and I think it'll just make them a much better team.
And then what about a team like Memphis, where you have a lot of talent, and you had Lionel Hollins, who's the Coach of the Year last year. He's obviously no longer there, but the talent is still there. Do you see them regressing at all?
It's an interesting team. Zebo is a guy who has got that lunch pail thing. He doesn't really jump well. He can kind of score in a tricky way. But I think that he's the one guy that kind of held them back last year. I think for them to make a jump, they need a better athlete in that position that can make plays. And, once he stops scoring a little bit, then he becomes a bit of a liability. And so I actually suggested, they should just try and figure out how to get Kenneth Faried in there and let Marc Gasol get all the extra post-ups, because he is such a terrific post-up player. He deserves to get more anyway. So I think that they might be stuck in the mud, brand new coach, and that coach himself is brand new to being a head coach. So they're in a difficult situation with that bloodbath of the Western Conference. So I think they're going to probably get stuck sort of in the same spot they are now, which is very good, but I don't think they're going to progress any farther this year.
We'll also talk about Denver a little bit later on and whether or not their depth will be able to help provide a spark for them. I think having Hickson behind Faried, I think, is going to make a difference. I think I like their bigs. I think McGee takes another step forward ahead this year, and Mozgov, you sort of know what you're getting from him. And Nate Robinson, if you need a little bit of scoring, you know that he can play both the 1 and the 2 and get himself open shots. Now he's going to be a chucker. And I don't think anybody's ever disputed that about Robinson. But he finds a way to be able to get open shots. And listen, he's not going to defend anybody, but you sort of know what you're getting out of him. And he is a spark plug.
Yeah, Nate actually convinced me last year in the playoffs that he could be a viable member of a 5-man offense who, while he did have these wondrous displays of individual bursts of scoring, he did run the team. He did get him into an offense, and he was able to play in enough control that he convinced me that he could do that role. And I think that Denver, with Brian Shaw as the coach, they're not going to do the pure triangle, but they're going to do elements of it, and I suspect they're going to get a lot better shots, which was what killed them in the playoffs with this free-form offense. They would just take the worst shots down the stretch, and they couldn't win a game that way. So I think they have a nice team, and I watched them play against the Lakers in the preseason, and I feel like they have that ability to sort of leapfrog over the bottom half of the Western Conference and perhaps even surprise somebody in the playoffs.
He's Coach Nick Hauselman. I'm Ben Heisler. This is NBA Courtside. Glad that you are here with us. Before we get to Sam Mitchell, Coach, it's time to give our top 5 off-season moves, and I'm going to begin this list with you.
Okay, well, I got to say that as far as a team that did the best overall, and boy, there were a lot of moves to go through. It took me a while to look through them all. I think that the biggest problem the Pacers had was their bench, and that's what cost them that series against the Heat. So what they did to shore that up with Scola, Copeland, and C.J. Watson,
Yep.
I think ends up being one of the key things that will really help them, move up in the rankings there. So I would probably go with the Pacers in my number one slot.
Wow, number one slot for the Pacers. See, for me, Iguodala. Are you going 1 through 5, or are you going 5 through 1?
I guess I'm going 1 through 5. You know what? Now I'm going to ruin the whole suspense. But,
No, we can build it from the reverse down. For me, it was Iguodala to the Warriors because I like his defensive versatility, and this was somebody who was arguably one of the best wing defenders in the NBA last year. You don't necessarily need him for his scoring, and he can give you 14, 15 a game and get boards as well. But listen, Curry's the show. You can spread the court with Thompson also on the outside. Lee is going to clean up on the glass. So Iguodala just provides a lot of versatility for the Warriors, and I think it's going to make a big difference. What about for number 2 for you?
The number 2, I think, it might be a shocker, and that is the Spurs. By simply picking up Bellinelli and putting him in the lineup instead of the little guard that they ended up trading. Oh, my goodness. I'm having a blank. But by picking up Bellinelli, I think that he gives them extra ball handling, a little bit better shooting, and his time in Chicago taught him some serious defense. I think that actually might be the thing that puts the Spurs over the top. It was a great pickup. He'll be a great fit.
Wow. Because
Gary Neal is who they replaced.
That's right,
you.
Gary Neal. Bellinelli's an interesting move. I didn't put him in my top 5 because I had somewhere I had to put Dwight Howard to the Rockets.
Yes, well, that is everyone's talking about that. So I figured let's get out of the ordinary here and talk about some stuff that people don't normally see.
There you go. You're looking for the things under the radar. I think that Houston's smart enough, and especially with Mikal running the show. And I like their front office staff. They're a smart staff. They'll find a way to get him to be able to play well with Omer down low. They'll mix him up. They'll play him a little bit at the 4, and that's something that I'll ask Coach Mitchell about as well. But I think Howard getting out of Los Angeles is going to be big for him, and he seems motivated from the preseason. And listen, when Howard is motivated and he's healthy, he's the best big man in the game. So I have Howard going to Houston at number 2. What about number 3 for you, Coach?
I'm going to go a little weird and say,
because it hasn't been weird enough yet.
Right. Well, hey, the Clippers, I think, ultimately did some really nice stuff there, adding Redick and Jared Dudley, and then also they kind of half traded for Doc Rivers. So I'm going to go with what they're doing there because while they might not win as many games this year because they certainly won a lot last year, they'll probably be better in the postseason. They'll be better prepared to win in the playoffs, and that's obviously what's most important. So I'm going with the Clippers.
Well, the Clippers are actually 4 on my list. Number 3 for me was I just thought the Celtics acquiring the 3 first-round picks in exchange for Pierce and Garnett and Terry, among others. This is a team that is looking at the future, and they knew that those guys, with having them for another season, it wasn't going to do anything for them, so they made the most of it. They brought in Brad Stevens, who I find to be a terrific coach. I certainly hope that it translates to the NBA level, but I think the way that they're playing, at least for the future, I think is a really smart strategy. So to get 3 first-round picks in 2014, 2016, 2018 is going to be big. Number 4 for you, Coach.
Well, let me just comment on that real quick because Olynyk is really going to be a good player.
Yeah, I like him a lot.
I hope he doesn't do as well for what the Celtics want to do, which is Riggins for Wiggins.
Right.
And so if he plays really well, they might win too many games. But they are certainly in a good position there to ultimately get in the position to get another great player. And I like what they're doing too. I'm going to go a little weird here and say that the Lakers also had some of the best moves, primarily because I'm looking at what they did. I really think they don't want to make the playoffs. I really feel like they're trying to make a run for the lottery, and it looks like that's what they were trying to do without anyone knowing, and that's what's so brilliant about it.
It's very difficult to fathom the Lakers not being in the postseason, especially if Kobe comes back and he gets himself healthy, because you know how competitive he is, and if they're going to be out of it and they're trying to be out of it, you almost wonder what type of dynamic that's going to provide and whether or not Kobe even stays. I think they have to keep him, I think, just based to try and get people in the seats, because if you're not a competitive team, at least you have Kobe. But number 4 for me, Coach, was, you talked about the Clippers. I agree. I think bringing in Redick and Dudley is huge for them. It really continues to spread the court for them. I'm also a big fan of Darren Collison, and CP3 has had some injury troubles before. Collison is a more than capable point guard. I think his outside shooting has gotten a little bit better, and they have Anton Jamison now, too, to be able to help out Barnes and to be able to play some 4 for them and back up Griffin. So I like that move. And then finally, number 5 for you.
I got Portland. I love what they did in the draft. They stole Thomas Robinson. They have Darrell Wright, who might give them something from the corners. And I like Alan Crabb as well. So what they need to do is shore up their bench. They have a nice starting 5, and they did just that. And if C.J. McCollum can come back, who looked absolutely terrific in the Summer League, then they're viable. And, again, making this Western Conference into even more of a bloodbath.
I think you're right. I think it's going to be the Clippers and the Spurs, and I think you're going to have OKC a little bit behind them. For number 5 for me, Coach, you talked about the Pacers being able to bring in Scola and Copeland and C.J. Watson, really firm up that bench for a run against Miami. And also the fact that Paul George is just going to take another step forward this year. I think he's the best perimeter defender behind LeBron in the NBA, and he's just turning into a terrific superstar. Pacers being able to re-sign David West was also key, too. So there you go. Those are our top 5 offseason moves. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Sam Mitchell. It's Courtside. He's Coach Nick. I'm Ben. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back, everybody. It's NBA Courtside along with Coach Nick Hauselman. My name is Ben Heisler, and we are very pleased to be joined now by the former Coach of the Year in the NBA. You can currently find him on NBA TV and also occasionally on SiriusXM Radio on Off the Dribble with Justin Termity. It is Coach Sam Mitchell. Coach, it's a pleasure to talk to you today. How are you?
I'm doing outstanding. How you guys doing?
We're great. It's good to talk with you today. The season is very close to getting underway. And with everything about to get started on Tuesday night, Miami is going to begin the season against Chicago. They're going to receive their rings, host the banner at American Airlines. So once tip-off begins, Coach, do you still consider Miami to be the absolute favorite to win it all again?
Well, I'm not going to say the absolute favorite. I consider them one of the favorites. I think you got to look at Chicago with the way Derrick Rose is playing, and it's inconceivably that he could be even better than his MVP year. And then you got the Indiana Pacers, who's probably from top to bottom, 1 to 10, one of the deepest, best teams I've seen in the last 10 years. And so when you look at just those 3 other teams right there that compete with Miami, I wouldn't say they're the overwhelming favorite. To me, the key for Miami is going to be how much can Greg Oden give them.
Well, Coach, if you've seen Oden play, do you have any sense of what he's going to be able to do in an 82-game schedule?
Well, it seems like he got a few minutes the other night to play. They only played in 4 minutes, and it seems like it's going to be a lot of baby steps. But I feel like at some point, maybe 25, 27 games into the season, they're going to have to roll him out and see can he play 20 to 26 minutes a game. And then I think if Greg Oden could play that 25 to 28 minutes a game, I think Miami would be poised and ready to repeat, because now Chris Bosh can play his natural position. Now LeBron James can dominate the perimeter. He doesn't have to go down there in the paint and start guarding bigger guys when he takes the beat.
And plus, you can keep Birdman to only about 15, 20 minutes a game where he's most effective, too. Coach, with the Rockets, they've played Howard a lot at the 4 so far this preseason, and really, for the most part, he's worked fine playing with Omer Asik both on the floor together. How do you see their lineup working out, and how much better does the Howard signing ultimately make Houston as far as contending in the West?
Well, you're talking about arguably the best center in the NBA. People consider they want to stay. Dwight Howard, probably at 70% last year, was still the best center in the NBA. I mean, he makes them a title contender in my mind because he commands so much attention. You have to single-handedly make sure someone puts the body on him. You have to. Your defense really in fast break offense has to start from inside out because you got to protect the paint. He just commands so much attention, and then with Chandler Parsons and all those guys and the weapons that they have in Houston, the way they shoot the ball, and then the bearded one. he just makes them that much better.
Coach, let me ask you this. There's a meme going on out there on Twitter and the internet about how having Asik and Howard start together is going to cause a whole lot of problems with spacing. I'm not buying that. What are your take on starting them together?
Well, I'm okay with that. I like what Kim McHale is doing. The bigger, the better. You're talking about 2 big, fast, athletic guys in Ashik and Dwight Howard. So, look, they're not the most skilled offensive players, but you don't have to be that skilled if you can get the ball off the glass, pump fake, and go up and dunk the ball. So I can see a lot of dunks and those guys protecting the basket because with James Harden and Parsons and the way they want to play, they got enough scoring in the backcourt.
Coach Sam Mitchell is joining us here on NBA Courtside with Coach Nick and myself, Ben Heisler. Coach, as far as the most under-the-radar off-season move goes, we were talking about our top 5 before you joined us. And, it's hard for me to imagine that 4 years and $48 million can actually go a little bit under the radar. But I think a lot of people have forgotten about Andre Iguodala going to Golden State. This is a really, really good wing defender in the NBA and a guy who can still drop 14, 15 a game, grab about 7, 8 boards as well. To me, the Iguodala move, I think, is the best under-the-radar off-season move. But what would you say as far as maybe a move that I think a lot of people are forgetting about?
Well, I agree with you. It changes their basketball team. If you think about Golden State, you think about, get up and down, three-point shooting team. And I remember talking to Jerry West, one of the consultants for Golden State at the Las Vegas Summer League. And he said with the signing of Andre Iguodala, it makes us a more complete team. So instead of now when Golden State is in the fast break pulling up for threes, they now have a guy who can get a three-pointer in a conventional way and one going to the basket. So what they're looking for is a guy that gives them a chance to change the pace, guy get to the basket, and then a guy that's point forward position who now can handle the ball, and you can use Steph Curry to run him off some screens. So
right.
People forget what Andre Iguodala adds to the table. Yeah, one of the shooters is going to have to go to the bench and come off the bench, but instead of making them a weaker team, it makes them a stronger, deeper team.
So are you seeing the possibility of a lot of lineups where we're going to have Iguodala as a primary ball handler, bringing it up and letting Curry? Because I feel like Curry ends up being his best when he's running off screens.
Absolutely, and I think it was just pure brilliance when those guys went after Andre Iguodala because people were wondering, why did Golden State need him? But when you start thinking about all the things he can do offensively, and then just think about defensively now, with a healthy Andrew Bogut and Andre Iguodala, you got two guys who like to play defense, who are probably two of the better defenders at their position. So now Golden State has went from a very mediocre defensive team to a chance to be a very good defensive team. Now you start thinking about Western Conference Finals, NBA Finals, because now you can get stops because you know you can score.
Coach, Nick and I were talking about how the Clippers really got an opportunity to improve their 2 and their 3, in particularly with Redick and Dudley coming over this year. But I think what most people are going to end up talking about is their acquisition of Doc Rivers. Is he the guy that the Clippers were missing to be legit NBA contenders? Because he's clearly a step up from Del Negro and the ability to be able to relate with a lot of those guys on that team. But I still worry about their ability to be able to close out and defend in the postseason. They're a terrific offensive team. They're great in transition. But I still worry about them, at least on the defensive end, especially in the half-court game when you play that so often in the postseason. But is Doc Rivers, you think, that missing link for them?
Jesus Christ, that is a long question. That might be the longest question someone ever asked me in the history. First of all, I want to preface this by this. Look, Benny Del Negro is a friend of mine. Doc Rivers is a friend of mine. It's hard to criticize a man that won 55-plus games.
Sure, that's fair.
Negro. Look, they didn't go as far as they like, but Benny won a lot of games. Second, Doc Rivers has his credibility because he won an NBA championship in Boston. It doesn't matter whether we think Benny's a better coach or Doc's a better coach. The thing that was important that the players think Doc Rivers is a better coach. So therefore, they're going to buy into Doc Rivers' system where they didn't buy into Benny Del Negro's system. Now, there's not a knock on Benny. Whatever buttons he needed to push to get those guys on the same page with him, he wasn't able to do. Doc Rivers comes in the door automatically with what he's done in Boston, with dealing with Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and those guys, and now translate that coming to L.A. With Chris Paul rarely endorsing Doc Rivers. He walks in the door, and these guys are bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. So that right there makes the Clippers a better team. But I agree with you, Nick. Doesn't mean they're a favorite because other than Chris Paul, Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan has showed me that they can make free throws or they're even good enough to be in the game at the end.
Well, Coach, let me ask about process over results, because certainly they were they were 6th ranked in synergy as an offense during the regular season, but they certainly, you could argue that what Chris Paul had to do to get a shot off and get a shot for his team compared to what we see now in the preseason, which is a lot easier because there's a lot more emotion. How do you feel about that? Is it a process that you'll know eventually will yield better results in the playoffs, or is it just simply the result? They scored, doesn't matter how they did it.
No, it's going to yield better results because, again, you go back to last year, not to knock on any coach, it was a lot of ISO basketball where it took Chris Paul to go into all his bag of tricks because you remember, he's not the quickest and most athletic of all the point guards. He may be the best, but he's not the most gifted. So it took all Chris Paul had to be the guy to get a shot. Not with Doc Rivers and this emotion offense with the ball moving, people setting screens, and it predicated on reads and cuts. It makes Chris Paul better now because not only do you have to worry about him with the ball, now you got to worry about guarding him without the ball and with all the other integral parts of the offense. It does make the Clippers more efficient offensively.
Coach, I'll give you a shorter question this time. What would you say will be the biggest challenge for Jason Kidd in Brooklyn entering his first season as an NBA head coach?
Oh man, probably the players having confidence in him at the end of the game, that he knows what he's doing. Because remember, everybody wants a veteran team. But the problem with coaching a veteran team is that they're veterans, that they know the game. And there are times when they may know a little something about that particular thing than you as the head coach. And they're going to be very boisterous in their opinion. And so, yeah, we all want veterans, but you have to take the good and bad that comes with coaching veterans. And I think Jason Kidd, yeah, he was a great basketball player, but he hadn't proven himself to be a great coach. And veteran players will call you out if they feel like you're making the wrong, judgment call.
Coach, have you had a chance to look at the Nets and what they're actually doing on offense and defense? Are you seeing some good fundamentals and sound foundation of how they're going to run their stuff?
Well, I haven't looked at them a lot, but I would just say with the team you got, just let those guys go play. Look, Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett's smart enough to know. The people can talk about those guys all you want. The key to the Brooklyn Nets winning is Brook Lopez. If Brook Lopez has a great season, the Brooklyn Nets going to go all the way to the Eastern Conference and battle either Miami, Indiana, whoever one of those other top 3 teams for the Eastern Conference. But Brook Lopez is the key because Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce cannot carry the load anymore. And Darren Williams is going to have to really distribute the ball. He can't try to take over the game because don't forget you got Joe Johnson sitting there making $21 million too, who's considered an all-star caliber player. So the guy that you got to center your offense around to me is Brook Lopez.
And Coach, Derrick Rose finally looks healthy, and he sat out all of last season. And not only does he look healthy, but he looks explosive. And actually, Coach Nick did a video sort of breaking down the new Bulls offensive formation, how it's changing, and ultimately better accustomed for Derrick Rose as a scorer. But Noah is still battling injury. Kirk Heinrich can't seem to stay healthy, unfortunately. Luol Deng has been a wonderful player for that organization, but he's put in a ton of minutes at leading the league, I believe, the last few years, and he's in a contract year. After everything's said and done, how do you see the Bulls season shaking out?
Well, I think the Bulls won the favorite. I hear all that you're saying, and, it seems like Joakim Noah is always going to be battling something, and it's always going to be something going on with the Bulls. But doesn't it seem like the more injuries that the Bulls have, the more defiant they get, the tougher they get, the better team that they become? It seems like the Bulls are one of the few teams in the NBA that handles adversity better than anyone. And so I still say the key to them is, hey, if Derrick Rose is playing better than he did before he got injured, then he just made everybody on that team a much better player. And last year, a lot of the Bulls players got better playing without Derrick Rose because they had to expand their game. And that's why I think with the emergence of Jimmy Butler, Luol Deng, and I think, hey, welcome back. I mean, I think the Bulls are going to be right there.
Coach, let's get into some nuts and bolts about fundamentals of defense, because we break down a lot of the Bulls' games and we explain how they run ice on pick and rolls. And Coach Thibodeau has a real big mantra of no middle, forcing everything to the baseline. And I'm curious, do you follow that same tenet, and did you coach it that way when you coached your teams on defense?
Well, it just depends. I tried to take away strength of players. And if sometimes that was forcing them to the baseline, we would do that. If sometimes it was forcing them to use their weak hand and it may have brought them to the middle, we would do that sometimes. But I was a big proponent in trapping point guards in a lot of pick and roll situations, whether it was high or side. So I tried to do things a little bit unconventional, but I tried to be really aggressive in my defense. But look, Tom Thibodeau was one of my coaches when I first came in the league in Minnesota. He's a very smart coach. He learned under some very smart coaches. And there's a lot of different ways to do it. You build your defense based on the type of players that you have and the ability that those guys have to execute it.
My final one for you, Coach, is pretty simple. Who was your all-time favorite player to coach?
My all-time favorite player to coach, Jose Calderon and Morris Peterson. I can't say one. And obviously Chris Bosh, but I say my two favorites was Jose Calderon and Morris Peterson, because they didn't have the talent that a Chris Bosh or Vince Carter had. They had to put the work in.
Well, I have a good question for you then as well, is which of the coaches that you played for or assisted had the most influence on your X's and O's?
Oh, without doubt, Bill Musselman. I mean, just, to me, one of the brilliant minds of basketball. I mean, I learned so much from him. Just, he would tell you things and moves to do during the game, and if you executed it, then it will work out just fine, just like he drew it up. So, I mean, he was just, to me, just a brilliant mind when it came to basketball.
I am curious, Bill Bibb was your coach at Mercer, and he actually, I don't know if you know, he played for Adolph Rupp at Kentucky. Was that a connection that you made?
Yeah, I knew that.
So, because that, Adolph Rupp goes back to the very beginning of the game, and that must have been kind of almost exciting to be around a guy that had that connection to him.
Well, as my coach would say all the time, that Adolph Rupp hated everybody. It didn't matter about, everybody talking, was he a racist? He said he hated all races. And so, he gave us some great stories about it. But, yeah, I was fortunate. I played for a great coach in college, and I think the thing he taught me, probably the most important thing, was taking responsibility and put the team first. And, I mean, he drilled that into us every single day. And I tell you what, I'm not only a better player, but a better person because of my college coach, Bill Bibb.
And you can follow Coach Sam Mitchell on Twitter at Sam Mitchell NBA, as well as catching him on NBA TV and on Off the Dribble on SiriusXM. Coach, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
There you go. That is Coach Sam Mitchell, kind enough to join us here on NBA Courtside along with Coach Nick Hauselman. My name is Ben Heisler. We'll come back. We're going to break down something new that the NBA is going to do for the first time since the mid-1980s. That's coming up here on NBA Courtside. Don't go anywhere. Our thanks again to Coach Sam Mitchell for popping on with us here on NBA Courtside with Nick Hauselman. I'm Ben Heisler. Glad that you are with us today. You can always give us a call at 888-968-9969 and follow us on Twitter. You can follow Coach Nick at bballsource and, of course, myself at Benny Heiss. Coach, big news came out yesterday where the NBA Finals is going to adopt a new rule for many, many years since the mid-1980s. I believe it was 1985. They went with the 2-3-2 rule, and now they're going back to the way that it should be, little 2-2-1-1-1. And, back in the 80s, they were a little bit concerned about the travel schedule, and the NBA was growing, and they were worried about the cost of everything. But basically, this was a very easy sell, and I'm glad that David Stern in his final year was able to come down, and this was a unanimous decision, I think the right one.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I was always concerned with the notion of giving a team 3 games in a row in their own home. And it kind of negated, to some degree, the home court advantage that the other team had.
Right.
And then certainly it's kind of gotten silly because everyone's taking charter planes now, and it's a lot easier to get in and out of the cities. So there's no question that the 2-2-1-1-1 format is a long time in coming.
I think you're right. And I was going through some of the old NBA Finals and looking at how many of these series actually went to a 7-game series. So since 1985, and curious to see if you know this off the top of your hand, and you're obviously a student of the game. How many times do you think there's been a 7-game NBA Finals since 1985?
Well, I know the Bulls never had one, and
Nope.
I know the Lakers and Celtics had one in 2009 or 2010.
2010.
So there's probably like 2, I think, right?
There's 4.
Four,
Times in 28 years that there has been a 7-game NBA Finals series. You had 2013. It's San Antonio and Miami.
Oh, of course, this year, yes.
Those are the easiest to forget, too. That's when you realize, like, man, I'm getting older.
Yeah. Don't even remind me.
So you had 2013, San Antonio and Miami. 2010 with the Lakers and the Celtics. 2005, the Spurs did it again. That was against the Pistons. And then...
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
Oh, you know what? I lied. I said 4 times. I'm sorry, I meant 5. 5 times in 28 years. And I still think that's a low number. But the other 2 was 94 with the Rockets and the Knicks.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 98, or I'm not 98, 88, you had the Lakers and the Pistons. And that's it.
Yeah.
And so I think this can only improve the series to the point where you're starting to see things get more competitive. And, you know, last year you had the matchup that everybody wanted, and I think it was great for the NBA. And you saw what can happen. You saw the type of discussion that can come with a 7-game series. And people thought that, you know, LeBron would be actually on the ropes for the first time. And the way Game 6 ended was just so remarkable and different. But, you know, if you had the 2-2-1-1-1 series, that game is in San Antonio.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is. And, you know, the interesting thing that no one's talking about as well is that from a writing standpoint, from NBA beat writers, a lot of these guys are going to actually lose. They're probably not going to be able to go because it's that much more expensive to send everybody back and forth. And they were talking about it on Twitter today. It's a real interesting point that it'll be curious to see how that actually shakes out and how the coverage ends up being, because certainly that is one of the bigger parts of what's exciting about the games in the 7-game series. But there's no question this is the way it should go, and it'll make it more balanced. And you know, if we can get more 7 games, I know if I had to coach those teams, I would not want a 7th game because those things will drive you crazy. But as a fan, as someone who watches the games, man, I would love to see as many of those as I can.
Did you ever, when you were coaching, did you ever have to tweak anything, knowing that, you know, if a Game 5 and a Game 6 were going to be, you know, I guess Game 5 and Game 6 were always in different locations, but, you know, coaching for a 2-2-1-1-1, say if it was a 2-2 series heading back to Game 5, do you have to change anything as a coach at that point?
Well, I certainly think that, you know, at the NBA level, you know that that's the game that's going to decide the series.
Yep.
The 5th game in the 2-2, I think, is 90%, I think, that decides the series. So you need to kind of pitch it almost like when you're pitching and you bring your starter back after 3 days rest. You got to shorten those rotations, keep your starters in, and really grind it to win that game. There is no leeway on that one. And so, yeah, that is certainly a thing that most of those coaches know and they have to do, and hope that it doesn't affect you for Game 6, because – you know, if you play guys longer and they get a little tweak or an injury or something, then that hurts you for Game 6, but you got to win that Game 5.
Yeah, Game 5 is crucial, and we'll be talking more NBA when we come back. He's Coach Nick. I'm Ben Heisler. This is NBA Courtside. Do not go anywhere. We'll be back very, very soon.
No flipping.
NBA Courtside.